guys, this is a segment from the Slumpbuster Podcast. You can find the full episode on any of the various podcast platforms, or, of course, subscribe to us on YouTube for more of our content. Other than that, guys, sit down, bust a slump, and enjoy. Okay, next team up in the division, and actually, coincidentally, the second Hard Knocks team in 2 years, we have the now Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to be playing in their shiny new home, but unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of people around to see it. Mark Davis and ownership is probably super pissed that the NFL is going to be restricting fans this year because, let's face it, if you're opening a brand new stadium and a brand new home, you want people in the stands. I wanted to see people in the stands. How cool would it have been to see what those crowds looked like in Raider Stadium, Dre?
Oh, absolutely. And, I always wonder, everybody says that whole adage of like, when you're playing in, Las Vegas, do you ever really have a home field advantage? Just because so many people are willing to travel to Vegas anyways, let alone to go watch their team play. So I wanted to see, is that going to be the truth, or do you actually legit have some Las Vegas Raider fans? The other thing is Las Vegas, I don't know the demographics there, but I can't imagine that many were always Raiders fans, right? Being in Las Vegas where they didn't have a sports team of their own, or I should say a football team of their own. I'm sure a lot of the local Las Vegas residents outsourced who their team was. And so, there might not even be any real Raiders fans in Vegas, let alone, people that are traveling. Was really excited to see what the fan base sort of looked like and just what we could see across the crowd. And honestly, I was excited to go watch a game. Like, I would have driven down to Vegas just to go check it out. But getting back to the football standpoint, I think they, had an interesting offseason. And something you and I were joking about, Juju, is they drafted like 20 wide receivers in this draft. So I don't know how much that really helps them.
They did attempt to fix their wide receiving group. They did have a training camp injury. Tyrell Williams is dealing with a torn labrum. But their first overall selection in this year's draft was going to be Henry Ruggs. He was the first wide receiver off the board, so over receivers like CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, his teammate. This guy has dynamic speed. He runs in the 4.3s. He's a burner. He's essentially their version of what a Tyreek Hill can be. But they didn't stop there. They drafted a Lynn Bowden out of Kentucky, former quarterback actually, and Brian Edwards out of South Carolina. So they did have a commitment to get some weapons around Derek Carr. They added perhaps his biggest weapon, though, Jason Witten, and his age 40 season. But on the bright spot, if they ever want to start a Monday Night Football broadcast on the field, they do have John Gruden and Jason Witten on the same sideline. So at least that's a possibility. And if they need draft analysis, they have Mike Mayock as their GMs. So they have the perfect television crew. Will that translate to them gain some wins? We'll see. Actually, speaking of Mayock's defense, he did a fantastic job with their first year's draft. So I'm not going to completely discount the players that they picked up in this year's draft. Max Crosby was a hell of a find. We definitely were interested to see how Jonathan Abrams would have done if he didn't miss the season due to a shoulder injury. And then Josh Jacobs, their running back, you got to give him credit. The only real problem I had with the Raiders draft last year was at 4 drafting Clelin Ferrell. He hasn't really developed, considering there was a lot of edge rushers at the top of the draft. There was the other Josh Allen they could have potentially drafted, who went to Jacksonville and actually had a pretty decent little season there. They did draft Damon Arnett and Emick Robinson, so a couple of cornerbacks to try and fix that defensive backfield. Pair that with, of course, the signings of Jeff Heath and Demarius Randall. So they're trying to fix up that back end of their defense. I just don't know if they're going to be good enough or able to, because let's face it, you're facing the Chiefs. You have to keep up with that speed. You have to keep up with a ton of weapons. And then look at what Denver did. That's another team with a lot of weapons that you're going to have to try and contain. So I don't know if the Raiders have enough or if this division is just going to be airing it out consistently. And if they are, I don't know if Derek Carr can keep up. I have my questions there. Speaking of Derek Carr, he's potentially in a quarterback competition with Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, who lost his job to Ryan Tannehill basically out of training camp last year. I mean, the decision to go with Ryan Tannehill was in the back of Mike Vrabel's mind heading out of training camp. And after a slow start, it was all but assured. I don't doubt that we could potentially see Marcus Mariota on the field this season. Dre, what would you say the chances of that happening are?
I just think Derek Carr's the better quarterback, though.
Okay.
But I agree. I think you're right. So I think Carr's the better of the two quarterbacks, but I think it's also sort of run his course, and we can sort of see that with, I think, the Raiders just in general.
Okay,
of that,
so chances where, like maybe a 30%, 20%. You don't sound too high on it, but
I'm not high on it. I'll give it like, barring injury, of course, right? Like if injury happens, then you got to go. But I think a full replacement with Marcus Mariota getting the start over Derek Carr just for football reasons, I'll give it about 25%.
With all the weapons there, will we ever see Derek Carr at that 2016 form pre-broken leg?
I am going to say no. I just think he's just had too much injuries, and the injuries have gotten to him. We'll never see him back at quite that level that he once was.
Show you mine if you show me yours. What's your record?
I still have them listed as the Oakland Raiders. I need to update that, but I have the Las Vegas Raiders going 5-11.
I have them one less than you. I have them going 4-12 in their inaugural season. And it's just, I was going through their schedule and I was just having a tough time saying they're the better team. I think that they're going to be competitive. They're going to be scrappy. I was surprised that they were still in the playoff hunt last year, to be honest. But knock on wood if you're with me here. But I don't think that the Raiders are going to do that well this year.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Sorry, but it does bring up some interesting questions considering this is, year 3 or 4 of Gruden we've seen at this point, and this team hasn't finished over 500 yet in his tenure. So if we have another bad season, how do you start evaluating that 10-year contract at that point?
I think it looks awful, right? I think you panicked and you just got, sort of a name that you had thought was going to be tough and, aggressive coaching or whatever it is that you think, but then it just didn't work out, right? So I think it's a bad decision all around, especially to be committed for that long, right?
What do you do at that point, though?
Hopefully they're not strapped for cash. Coach contracts don't come out of your salary cap, I believe, right? So you can technically
you have to pay them.
You have to pay them.
They're guaranteed. So if you fire him after year 3 or year 4, it looks bad because you're still paying him $10 million each year for the next 6 years.
Yeah, no, it's true. It looks bad, but hopefully you have a whole lot of money on you and you can just move off, right? Like sometimes you gotta make these tough decisions.
Well, Mark Davis is the most cash-strapped owner in the NFL. That's well documented. Even though we see him at all the UFC events, having a good time. I don't know if Mark Davis has a good life or doesn't have a good life. With that haircut, I assume no, but then you think about how much money this guy does have. Even if I say he's the poorest owner in the league, still doing really, really well. The problem is, of course, again, no fans in that stadium this year. Actually, I'll ask you this, though, before we completely move on, because we have heard speculation that some teams might have fans in the stadium. Do you think, considering that Nevada was one of the states who was really eager to open up, that we will see fans at any point during the Las Vegas Raiders season?
I think that we will. I think we'll see fans in there. As long as the casinos are open, I think that we will see fans in some capacity in the stadium, right? And it may be socially distanced in some weird way, right? Like you and your family can only buy, a seat as long as there's 2 in between you and the next, family or whatever. And they do every other row or something like that. I think that that's probably what we'll see. Of course, you always run the risk of if everybody's traveling to Vegas again, now coronavirus is spreading like wildfire through Vegas. And then, the whole city gets shut down again. And so hopefully that doesn't happen. But I think as long as casinos are open, we'll see some fans in the stands.